Imagine moving to a new state, starting a new life, only to realize the community around you doesn't want you there. That's the harsh reality for many Black Americans living in certain U.S. states today. Despite progress in cities and urban centers, large parts of America remain racially homogenous and socially exclusive. It's not always about open hostility. Sometimes it's the silence, the stares, the isolation. From lack of representation to persistent inequality, these states often feel stuck in a different era, one that still hasn't made room for everyone. And for Black residents or visitors, it can feel like navigating a country within a country. In this video, we uncover the top 7 whitest states where Black Americans often feel unwelcome in 2025. We break down the data, the stories, and the lived experiences behind the statistics. If you're planning a move, a road trip, or just want to understand the deeper social divides in the U.S., this is a video you don't want to miss. Let's get started. Number 7, Vermont. Vermont, the land of maple syrup, Bernie Sanders, and stunning mountain views. But for many Black Americans, this picturesque state comes with an unspoken warning. Proceed with caution. With over 93% of the population identifying as white and less than 1.5% identifying as Black, Vermont is one of the least racially diverse states in the country. That lack of diversity isn't just a demographic statistic. It translates into real-world experiences of isolation, exclusion, and subtle racial tension. For Black residents, it can feel like living under a constant microscope, where every move is watched, every accent scrutinized, and every presence questioned. On the surface, Vermont prides itself on being progressive. It's environmentally conscious, politically liberal, and fiercely independent. But beneath that liberal veneer, Black residents have reported facing systemic barriers, discrimination in housing, underrepresentation in local politics, and limited access to culturally competent healthcare and education. It's the kind of racism that whispers instead of shouts, the kind you can't always prove, but you definitely feel. Vermont's rural nature adds to the social isolation. Outside of Burlington, the state's only city with a somewhat visible Black community, many towns lack even the most basic cultural representation. For new Black families or professionals moving in, finding a barber, church, or even a community where they feel seen and safe is a challenge. It's not uncommon for people to say things like, "You're not from around here, are you?" Not out of curiosity, but as a coded reminder of otherness. One of the most glaring examples came in 2018, when Vermont's only Black female legislator, Kaya Morris, resigned from office due to relentless racist harassment and threats. That wasn't just a warning sign, it was a wake-up call. Vermont may look like a progressive haven, but for many Black residents, it feels like a state that wants the image of diversity without doing the work. If you're Black and considering a move here, be prepared for beauty and bureaucracy, charm and cold stares, liberal values and conservative social realities, all existing side by side in this complex, quiet corner of New England. Number 6, Maine. Maine is known for its rocky coastlines, lobster rolls, and lighthouses. But for Black Americans, it's also known for something less inviting: extreme isolation. With over 94% of the population identifying as white and barely 2% as Black, Maine is one of the whitest states in the U.S. For Black residents, this isn't just a statistic. It's a lived experience that often includes being the only person of color in a town, a school, or even an entire county. Many Black Mainers report feeling like outsiders in their own neighborhoods, often met with polite but distant curiosity that can border on alienation. In cities like Portland and Bangor, there are at least small pockets of diversity, but venture into the more rural areas, and the experience can quickly turn from awkward to uncomfortable. Black residents have described being followed in stores, stared at in restaurants, and asked invasive questions like, "Where are you really from?" While overt racism isn't always visible, the state suffers from a chronic case of what some call New England coldness, a subtle, ingrained resistance to outsiders that can feel especially sharp if you're not white. This isn't just about social awkwardness. There are structural problems too. Black residents face disparities in housing access, employment opportunities, and healthcare coverage. Even basic services like finding a barber who understands Black hair or a doctor familiar with Black health issues can be a serious challenge. And although Maine has made efforts to improve racial equity, like Governor Janet Mills's initiatives on racial justice, the pace of change is slow and the impact uneven. Maine's small Black community often relies on grassroots organizations to create safe spaces and cultural support, but these are few and far between. Schools, law enforcement, and civic institutions often lack representation or understanding, leaving many Black residents feeling both invisible and exposed. If you're Black and thinking of moving to Maine, it's worth asking, do you want peace and quiet at the cost of cultural connection? Because while Maine offers stunning nature, low crime, and a slower pace of life, it also comes with a heavy dose of social isolation and a lack of cultural infrastructure for people of color. In Maine, the welcome mat is out, but for Black residents, it often comes with a disclaimer. Don't expect to blend in. Number 5, South Dakota. South Dakota may be home to Mount Rushmore and breathtaking prairies, but for Black Americans, it's often a place where visibility comes with vulnerability. With a Black population under 2%, South Dakota ranks among the least diverse states in the country. That lack of diversity isn't just a demographic. It's a daily reality for Black residents and visitors who often find themselves as the only person of color in schools, stores, or entire communities. In places like Sioux Falls or Rapid City, there's some degree of urban familiarity, but in rural areas, the experience can be isolating at best and hostile at worst. Many Black South Dakotans report being stared at, questioned, or followed in stores, and some have even described being treated as if their presence needed justification. It's not uncommon to be asked, "What brings you here?" A seemingly innocent question that carries the weight of suspicion and exclusion. Systemic inequality adds another layer of difficulty. Black residents in South Dakota face higher unemployment rates, limited access to quality education, and disparities in healthcare. Law enforcement bias is also a concern, with Black individuals more likely to experience racial profiling or harsher treatment during traffic stops and legal proceedings. While South Dakota's economy thrives on agriculture and tourism, these industries offer little in the way of inclusive opportunity for communities of color. Starting a Black-owned business can feel like swimming upstream, with limited access to funding, mentorship, or local support. Social integration isn't much easier. Black families often find it hard to form community bonds or find culturally relevant institutions like churches, salons, or social clubs. Instead, they rely heavily on online communities and out-of-state connections to feel seen and supported. And while South Dakota is filled with scenic beauty and friendly people, friendliness doesn't always equate to acceptance. In many small towns, conservative values and insular attitudes prevail, making any visible difference, racial or otherwise, stand out more starkly. For Black Americans, South Dakota offers wide open spaces, but few safe cultural havens. The beauty of the land may be undeniable, but the experience of living here as a Black person is often one of emotional distance and cultural isolation. In short, the state's landscapes may be welcoming, but the social climate tells a much colder story. Number 4, North Dakota. North Dakota may be known for its oil fields, sweeping prairies, and low crime rates, but for Black Americans, the state can feel like a place frozen in time, where diversity is barely a whisper. With over 86% of its population being white and only around 3% identifying as Black, North Dakota ranks among the least racially diverse states in the U.S. This lack of diversity isn't just statistical, it profoundly shapes daily life for Black residents. In major cities like Fargo and Bismarck, diversity exists in pockets, often connected to college campuses or military stations. But venture beyond the city limits, and the picture changes quickly. Small towns often feel unfamiliar and unwelcoming, not through overt hostility, but through subtle exclusion and perpetual curiosity. Many Black residents describe being stared at in grocery stores or stopped in public spaces simply because their presence feels out of place. These aren't isolated incidents. From job interviews that end with suspicious glances to being pulled over more frequently than white counterparts, Black individuals in North Dakota often live under a cloud of heightened scrutiny. Racial profiling, microaggressions, and systemic barriers in education and employment are common. And while the state boasts strong job growth in energy and agriculture, access to these opportunities for Black workers remains limited. Those who do relocate for work often struggle to integrate due to a lack of cultural institutions or community support. Socially, North Dakota can be painfully isolating for Black families. Churches, barbershops, and cultural hubs that serve as lifelines elsewhere are few and far between. Even in schools, Black students report feeling left out, misunderstood, or targeted for disciplinary actions more harshly than their white peers. Though many locals are polite, it's often the kind of politeness that doesn't translate to inclusion. In deeply conservative towns, anything different is viewed with suspicion, and race adds another layer to that outsider status. For Black Americans considering North Dakota, the cost of living may be low and the opportunities promising on paper, but the emotional toll of being the only one is a serious reality. In a state so proud of its heritage and independence, there's still a long road to travel toward true inclusion and belonging. Number 3, Idaho. Idaho is a land of stunning natural beauty, rugged mountains, and an economy that's been steadily growing. But for Black Americans, this state's breathtaking landscapes come with a heavy sense of isolation and racial unease. With nearly 90% of the population being white and barely over 1% Black, Idaho is not just lacking in diversity, it's almost defined by that absence. For many Black residents and visitors, the challenges begin the moment they enter smaller towns. Stares in restaurants, suspicious glances at gas stations, and hushed conversations in grocery aisles aren't uncommon. It's not always overt racism, but it's often enough to make people feel unwelcome or hypervisible. Historically, Idaho has been home to white supremacist activity, especially in the northern part of the state. The Aryan nations once had their headquarters in Hayden Lake, and although that compound was shut down decades ago, its legacy still lingers. That past continues to affect how safe and accepted Black people feel in certain regions of the state. Even in cities like Boise, which is relatively more progressive, Black residents report being isolated. There's a lack of Black-owned businesses, support networks, and cultural spaces that are vital to building community and fostering belonging. The feeling of being the only one becomes a daily reality, whether at work, school, or social gatherings. Job opportunities may be expanding in tech and logistics, but Black professionals often struggle to advance due to unspoken biases and underrepresentation in leadership roles. In the education system, Black students frequently report being stereotyped or treated unfairly, especially in rural school districts. This combination of social invisibility and systemic barriers takes a toll on mental health and quality of life. Even law enforcement interactions in Idaho have raised concerns, with numerous reports of racial profiling and disproportionate stops. For Black travelers, driving through certain areas can feel risky, especially at night or in unfamiliar rural communities. Idaho might promise peace, low taxes, and outdoor adventure. But for Black Americans, the reality often includes cultural alienation and social discomfort. Until more intentional efforts are made toward racial inclusion and equity, Idaho will remain a place where Black residents must constantly choose between natural beauty and personal safety. Number 2, Wyoming. Wyoming, known as the Cowboy State, is famous for its wide-open plains, stunning national parks, and rugged independence. But for Black Americans, it can feel less like a frontier of freedom and more like a cultural desert. With over 91% of the population being white and only about 1% Black, Wyoming is one of the least racially diverse states in the U.S. That lack of diversity isn't just about numbers. It shapes daily life for those who don't fit the local mold. Black residents often report being stared at in public, approached with intrusive questions, or treated like outsiders even after living in the state for years. There's a quiet but persistent message. You can be here, but don't expect to feel at home. While cities like Cheyenne and Casper offer slightly more progressive attitudes, the rest of the state feels like stepping into a place frozen in time. Small towns where everyone knows everyone can be especially difficult for Black individuals and families to navigate. The stares aren't just curious, they're loaded with assumptions and at times suspicion. Black workers in Wyoming's energy and agriculture sectors report being overlooked for promotions, treated differently by colleagues, or even outright harassed. There's little infrastructure for supporting Black communities, few cultural spaces, limited Black-owned businesses, and nearly no social safety nets for racial minorities. Law enforcement relationships in Wyoming are often strained, with Black residents experiencing over-policing and racial profiling, particularly in traffic stops and public interactions. Hate crimes may be rare numerically, but they carry weight in a state where every racially charged incident becomes local news. Social isolation is another key issue. Many Black residents describe having no one to turn to, no local support groups, and few opportunities to connect with others who share their experiences. Even schools offer little in terms of cultural inclusivity, and Black students often report feeling alienated in overwhelmingly white classrooms. For those seeking solace in nature, Wyoming delivers beauty beyond words. But for Black Americans, that natural serenity often clashes with a social landscape that's anything but welcoming. Unless you're willing to exchange diversity and community for solitude and scenery, Wyoming may offer more discomfort than freedom. Number 1. Montana. Montana, with its breathtaking mountains, wide skies, and untouched wilderness, is a dream for nature lovers. But for Black Americans, that dream can quickly blur into a complicated, isolating reality. With 88% of the population identifying as white and less than 1% Black, Montana ranks as one of the least racially diverse states in the country. That demographic skew has serious consequences, not just culturally, but socially and emotionally. Black residents and travelers frequently report feeling like outsiders, even in the state's more populated areas like Billings or Missoula. In smaller towns, that feeling often intensifies into discomfort, suspicion, or even subtle hostility. While Montana markets itself as rugged and free-spirited, that spirit doesn't always extend to embracing racial diversity. The state has a troubling history with white nationalist activity, particularly in towns like Kalispell and Whitefish, where extremist groups have left behind a lingering atmosphere of exclusion. Even though these groups may no longer dominate headlines, their legacy still affects how locals perceive difference. Black residents recount being followed in stores, questioned by strangers, or avoided in social settings, all symptoms of a place that hasn't grown past a narrow racial narrative. Cultural resources are almost non-existent for Black communities. Finding a church, barber, or grocery store that caters to Black culture can feel like searching for a needle in a haystack. And when it comes to professional life, Black Montanans often face glass ceilings, wage gaps, and limited networking opportunities. Education isn't exempt either. Black students are often among the only people of color in their classrooms, with few role models or culturally relevant support systems. Law enforcement interaction remains a concern. While overt racism may not be rampant, stories of profiling, microaggressions, and biased treatment are common. In a state with so few Black voices, those experiences often go unheard and unaddressed. Montana may offer unparalleled beauty and peace for those seeking solitude, but for Black Americans, it can feel like that peace comes at the cost of community, inclusion, and emotional safety. Unless you're prepared to trade cultural connection for natural isolation, Montana's big sky country might leave you feeling small, alone, and unwelcome. Thank you for joining us on this important and honest look at the top 7 whitest states where Black Americans often feel unwelcome. This isn't about pointing fingers. It's about understanding the lived experiences of millions and challenging the silence. If you found this video enlightening, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for more deep dives into culture, society, and race across America. We encourage you to share your stories or thoughts in the comments. Every voice matters. Let's build a more informed and empathetic community together. Stay smart, stay aware, and always travel with your eyes open. Your journey deserves truth.